Since 2008, Bradley DCC has been leading the pack in customizing HO scale locomotives. Specializing in DCC and sound installation, Bradley DCC has taken the basic factory detailed locomotive to the next level with weathering, LED lighting, super prototypical detailing, and more. If you're looking to turn a plain HO scale locomotive into an authentic representation of the prototype, look no further than Bradley DCC. Visit bradleydcc.com for more information and a list of services that will take your HO scale models to the next level. Snow was still on the ground on March 29, 2014. The winter was one of the harshest in recent memory for the state of Michigan, evidenced by the still frozen Lake Superior in the middle of May. On this day, WATCO's Grand Elk Railroad was running a Saturday extra to Otsego to pick up a few high-priority boxcars from the USG Corporation's paper mill. The two units leading today's Saturday Extra are GP40-2LW locomotives, being built in 1974 and 1975 for the Canadian National Railway. The 4-axle diesels are equipped with wide cabs, a standard trait on some of the Canadian roads. Upon arriving at USG, the train would shunt cars around the property for about 30 minutes before being set for the reverse move back to Kalamazoo. Or so we thought. By the end of the day, these two units would be the lead locomotives on a very interesting Grand Elk train number 303. The line our train is traveling over is the former Kalamazoo, Allegan, and Grand Rapids Railroad main line, which would later become part of the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern's Grand Rapids Division. The Grand Rapids Division ran between White Pigeon and the division's namesake city. In 1909, Michigan's Railroad Commission reviewed the line, reporting, "The rail on this line is 65 and 70-pound steel, all in fair condition and equal for the traffic presented." The company is reballasting about 40 miles of this division this year, with a superior quality of gravel. The surface of the track is fair, however, it is reasonable to believe that the surface will be much improved inside of 90 days. Fences are generally satisfactory. Cattle guards are in good repair. Switch stands provided with double targets, switch lights, and locks. The stations on this line were found to be generally in good repair, including water closets for steam locomotives. However, it was noted that Hopkins, Otsego, Plainwell, and Schoolcraft are in an unsanitary condition. The platforms are generally of cinder or crushed stone. Quite a number of bridges are being rebuilt. In 1916, the New York Central leased the trackage and would use this line as one of two connections to Grand Rapids, with the other being the Michigan Central's Grand Rapids branch based out of Jackson. The New York Central would use this line regularly up until the Penn Central days, when the line was deemed as an excess. Since the Penn Central merger gave the railroad access to Grand Rapids via the Pennsy-controlled Grand Rapids and Indiana main line, the LS and MS branch line was no longer needed, and the majority was completely gone or out of service by the startup of Conrail. After switching USG, the two jeeps started moving east towards Plainwell. Once at Plainwell, the locomotives would leave the boxcars at the Otsego branch lead and head north to rescue the previous night's southbound train to Kalamazoo. Grand Elk train number 303 had issues with the lead locomotives and needed assistance in heading south. The two GP40-2 LWs would tie on and rescue the train, running long hood forward from just north of Moline to Kalamazoo. We chased the two Jeeps running light power on the journey north. After tying onto the train, the crew would take the long freight to the community of Moline, where they would pick up outbound cars from Green Valley Agriculture. Green Valley Agriculture produces fertilizer and opened their extended siding in the fall of 2013, just a few months before our visit. Here, the locomotives pulled forward, then shoved back to tie on to the outbound cars. Once Green Valley had been serviced, the train continued south, passing through the communities of Wayland, Bradley, Shelbyville, Martin, and Plainwell before arriving at Kalamazoo. We caught the train once more, near a farm, before heading to Kalamazoo. Several four-legged friends would watch the train as it continued south. Kalamazoo, we observed the still-in-service BO Tower guarding the diamonds of the Amtrak Michigan line. Built by the New York Central Railroad to guard the interlocking at Kalamazoo, BO Tower received its mechanical lever frame in 1914. The lever machine was manually operated for 100 years until October of 2014, when Amtrak used a push-button control system to streamline the process. 2 years later, BO Tower's manned operations ended forever, closing permanently in late October of 2016, when the junction was completely automated by Amtrak. The lever machine still remains intact, with the tower having an uncertain future abandoned next to the right-of-way. While in Kalamazoo, we observed Amtrak number 364 departing the station. This train is part of Amtrak's Blue Water service to cities like Battle Creek, Lansing, Flint, and Port Huron, Michigan. Once Amtrak train number 364 cleared the diamonds, Grand Elk train number 303 cleared the Michigan line as it made its way south, ending a long day's chase for our production team. The setting sun made for a beautiful backdrop as the train pounded the diamond over the former Michigan Central Main Line. Later in the year, on November 8, 2014, we found ourselves along the right-of-way of WATCO's other Michigan short line, the Ann Arbor. At Pittsfield Junction, just south of the namesake city of Ann Arbor, the southbound train would pick up several high-cube boxcars from the Saline branch, which were dropped off earlier that morning. The crew would perform several unique switching maneuvers while using the Y, which included sorting out the lead locomotive for the journey south. After picking up the cars, the train would continue its journey southward to Milan, Michigan. There, the high-cube boxcars would be dropped off, and later on, the Norfolk Southern local train B70 would pick up the cars and head for Detroit. The high cubes are carrying automotive parts from the Forcia plant in Saline, Michigan. The plant is located on the former Detroit, Hillsdale, and Southwestern Railroad. This is one of the most rare daylight shortline moves in the state of Michigan, with the Ann Arbor Railroad switching the plant regularly at nighttime throughout the month. This line was constructed in 1870 and 1871, linking Hillsdale and Ypsilanti, Michigan. Through the support of State Representative Henry Waldron, the railroad became a reality. Waldron founded the railroad and served as its first president. He had been involved with the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway earlier in his life, serving as a board member. The railroad was once connected to the Michigan Central at Ypsilanti, and crossed a couple of other railroads on its way west to Hillsdale. Based on the timetable from 1874, the DH&SW had 4 scheduled passenger trains per day, with 2 from each direction. One of the passenger trains carried the mail for the local towns along the line. In 1880, after his death, Waldron was honored by having a small village in Hillsdale County named after him. Waldron was a supporter of farmers, and since the village revolved around farming, the name was deemed most appropriate. Ironically, Waldron was located on the now abandoned right-of-way of the Cincinnati Northern Railroad. In 1881, the line was taken over by the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern, which had been a subsidiary of the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad since 1877. In 1914, the LS and MS came under the control of the New York Central. The New York Central controlled the line through the early 20th century. Several important customers were located on the branch line. Sadly, only one remains. In Saline, the Ford plant was built in 1966 to replace the facility in Brooklyn, Michigan. Today, the same Ford plant manufactures automotive parts under the name of Forcia. The other important customer on the DH&SW branch line was the Peninsular Portland Cement Company, located in Cement City, Michigan. Originally named Kelly's Corners, Cement City was surrounded by farmland. Orson Kelly, the man responsible for naming the town Kelly's Corners, operated the general store there. The LS&MS was the first railroad to serve the village via the DH&SW, and the Cincinnati Northern Railroad came later in 1896. The Cincinnati Northern Depot landed in Jackson County. Nearby Goose and Silver Lakes contained a significant concentration of marl, which is a combination of clay and calcium carbonate necessary for making cement. The PPCC was founded by a group of Jackson businessmen in 1889. The plant begun in the fall of 1899, just west of the DH&SW on Goose Lake. It was the first factory in the world to have its machinery and lights completely powered by electricity. The cement industry dusted the area for more than 60 years before closing in 1961. More than 100 men were laid off that December, affecting more than half of the village's population. Much of the plant sat idle until the 1990s when it was cleared for redevelopment. The redevelopment did not come to fruition, and the site remains vacant and unused today. The DH&SW branch was supposed to be cut back from Hillsdale to Manchester in the early 1950s, but thanks to the persistence of several Brooklyn, Michigan small business owners, rail service on the line remained active until the early 1960s. In 1963, the tracks were removed between Hillsdale and Manchester, and was further cut back to Bridgewater a few years later. Due to the Penn Central merger in 1968, the newly formed company took control of the branch. Penn Central Railroad was formed in 1968 with the merger of the New York Central and the Pennsylvania Railroad, which meant they also controlled the branch line. During the same year, the line was cut back from Ypsilanti to the middle of a cornfield about a mile east of the diamond with the Ann Arbor Railroad. A new connection between the Ann Arbor Railroad main and the branch was installed, and the Shortline took control of the remaining track, serving the Ford plant of Saline. The right-of-way remains in place on many parts of this line, including a few bridges, but are mostly abandoned. We hope you enjoyed this brief look into WATCO's 2 short lines in Michigan, with rare moves over lightly used branch lines that have colorful histories. Thank you for watching Delay in Block Productions. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to check out our Michigan Shortlines playlist.